What's going on? It's your boy Mixmaster B here live from the MMB Radio Studios for the MMB Radio Podcast, where no topic is too big or too small. We talk about them all. And on the phone lines is a woman who I've been courting and trying to have her on the podcast for quite a while. And I know I say that about a lot of guests, and I say that about a lot of guests. But seriously, I've been trying to have her on the podcast because she's something that's really just inspired me with not only what she does as a model, but she's also what we call a horror babe, and we're going to ask her details about that. She's also a survivor, and we're going to ask about that as well. So I want to welcome her in to the phone lines right now, Farrah DeMorte. Farrah, what's going on?
Hi, how are you?
Doing awesome. And like I said, there's so many things I want to ask and so many questions because I've been wanting to have you on the podcast for, like, I'm not even exaggerating. It's been a couple years since
thank you for having me.
Yes, and I mean, with understanding of why you weren't able to make it on the podcast, and we'll get into all of that. So I guess the first thing I want to kind of clarify is because we have a lot of guests on the podcast and we have models, and there's different models from different genres, but you're classified as like a horror babe. So for those who are like listening and they're used to like, glitz and glamour models and adult models, like, what is horror babe status?
I mean, I kind of came up with a term myself just so that like people would get an idea when they were going through my Instagram, like what I was about. I mean, I'm just a big horror fan. 90% of my tattoos are all horror based. So I am an alternative model, which means, anything alternative from fashion status. I used to be a fashion model. I started modeling back in 1999. And, once I hit my 30s and you kind of cap your max at age requirements to do most of that kind of stuff, aside from like regular print, that's when I went into like what I really liked was like the, tattoos and the wild hair colors and anything that, didn't have to have a blank canvas essentially, so you could take on whatever role they wanted you to be.
Now,
so horror babe is just, I'm just a horror fan. I'm a chick. So, anyone can be a horror babe,
Now, you grew up in, where, New Jersey? Or, like, I know you're in the East Coast of New Jersey.
Yeah.
Growing up, and you said you did regular, I guess what we consider, glamour.
Mainstream.
Mainstream, yeah. I was going to say, like, what is the proper term for it? Because there's so many different genres of it. So you were doing that.
Model.
Yeah.
Print model, runway, did all that stuff, yeah.
Okay, so you were doing all that, like, minus tattoos, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
very vanilla.
now, did you always want to do that? Because you say you feel more comfortable being what you've classified as the horror babe, which is cool because you coined the phrase and you own it, and essentially. You said that's more of your natural self. So when you started doing the modeling, did you feel any kind of like, I don't know how to say, like restraints or, pressure to kind of be something you weren't?
There's definitely a pressure to, fit any mold, and it gets you more work, because I also was, I was doing acting as well. So I would go for go-sees and auditions, and, because I went to one and they're like, oh, well, we have a ton of models who look like you. And I had black curly hair. I was always like a goth, like metalhead chick, so I always had that kind of dark look. So I, started to, I was getting a lot of work at the time. So I was like, all right, I can do this and, put on the hat, if you will, to fit whatever they needed. And so, I had lightened my hair. I had softened my makeup. And, I started to wear color. What is that, So it was, I mean, I loved it. And I still do love it. But, there is this whole thing where you're like, okay, I'm, dancing in this small little box of, requirements where I'm like, oh, I really love that look of all the tattoos. I love that look of, the wild hair and stuff. And, sure, you can still get work like that, but then you are once again typecast. And I didn't really know what part of acting I wanted to do. Like some people are like, oh yeah, I want to be in soap operas or I want to be in theater. Or I was just whatever I can get, I'll do commercials. I don't care. So, I had a pretty good run with it. And then, I'm my day job is a hairdresser or hairstylist. So I came to a crossroads where I was like, okay, do I want to keep doing the modeling and acting and living paycheck to paycheck, not knowing, what my future is going to hold, or do I want job security? So I took the other road, and I was like, all right, I want a house, I want a car, I want nice things, go on trips. I don't want to have to worry about, am I going to make it this month? Because that's just how a gig worker can be, is just you fly by the seat of your pants. And for some people that works. I wanted a bit more out of life. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to do this and then do the modeling stuff as a hobby, and I can pick and choose more of what I wanted to do at that point.
So when you first started doing modeling, growing up, is that something that you wanted to do? Like, what were your dreams of being when you grew up? Did you want to do hair? Did you want to do makeup? Did you want to do acting? Like, as a child, going into your teen years, like, what rounded you into doing modeling?
I definitely was always attracted to, I'm 5'10", so I was always tall, and everyone's like, oh, you should be a model, you should be a model. And, and then I always took a pretty good picture. So I was like, all right, maybe there's something to this. That could be fun. So I had tried it several times, when I was younger, and, went through like some casting classes and acting classes rather. Modeling schools are all bullshit anyway. So can I say bullshit? Okay.
You just did.
But it is. So it's either, you either have it or you don't. So you get coaching of some sort. But, I always liked it. I always wanted to be some kind of entertainer. I was like, oh, I want to be a rock star. And well, now I do that. So there's that, I'm not famous, but I sing for two bands. So yeah, it's just, I like to be an entertainer, but I always did my friend's hair too. I actually wanted to be a mortician, but,
I can see how that goes hand in hand now with the whole vibe,
Yeah. I was really good at biology and all that stuff. And so I did well at those subjects in school, but.
Yeah, I hated cutting up shit.
That I loved. Absolutely. I was like, well, how does this work? But, but my problem is I'm only good at subjects I'm interested in. And unfortunately with college, they make you take all these things that have nothing to do with your major. And that's where I was like, okay, I'm probably not going to do well at that. So that's when I chose a trade school, where you just go to school for what you want to know, Mm-hmm. So I chose hair.
What was one of the biggest challenges when you first got into modeling? Because 2021. You're talking about 1999. It's just like forever ago.
I'll be 44 this year, and I'm still doing it.
See, I would have. No, first off, you know the rule. You never ask a woman how old she is, and I would have never guessed 44. So that's just that. There is like a mind fuck for me right now. Just say that you're 44. I'm like, okay, so hold on, wait, what was my next question? Because now I'm like stumbled over that. But like I said, 1999, there was like the rise of the internet, all that stuff. But like now if you look at it in 2021, and you can say this about almost anything that you get into, like even me now doing a podcast, like I'm kind of like in the same boat as you, is where, I had an interest, when I was graduating high school in 1999 and 2000, you know what I mean? Like I had an interest in that. Mm-hmm. And now it's like getting guests on the podcast. Everybody's got a podcast. You know what I mean? It's like if you don't have a podcast, it's like saying you don't have an email address. It's like people look at you like, what the fuck is wrong with you? What do you mean you don't have a podcast? So yeah, exactly. So it's just like there's that challenge for me. But what was challenges for you in 1999 as far as modeling went?
Well, it's so different now. And I always joke with all the new models, and I'm like, oh my God, you guys have no idea what it was like, because now you can just basically just reach out to any company online and be like, hey, I want to model your stuff. Or if you have all this following, they hit you up and they pay you to do stuff like that. So
everybody's an Instagram model,
Something, but back then, you had to actually pay lots of money for good photographs. You had to go in person. So I lived in South Jersey. I would drive to New York, or I would drive to Philadelphia, sometimes even to Maryland, just to go for a 15-minute go-see. That's when you walk in, you hand them your portfolio. They ask you to put on a bikini or bra and underwear or a certain outfit. You walk in, they look you up and down, they ask you to smile, they ask you to say your name, and then they tell you to your face what they don't like about you.
Which could be a harsh reality for someone who's just getting into it.
There was Yes, and this is what I'm saying is like, everyone's like, oh, you gotta have a thick skin because, you get trolled online. I'm like, you have no idea what it's like to like walk into a room full of all these girls who all feel the same way. And here you are in front of people and this is happening where, you get online, there's no face. It's all just words. It's all typing, nobody actually says it to your face or looks you up and down to your face. Like, girls would judge each other or, I've been on go-sees where I've seen girls knock other girls' headshots into trash cans and stuff. Like, it's brutal. And you just gotta they always said, for every 10 auditions, you would get one, or every 10 go-sees, you would get one. And as soon as you leave the audition or the interview or the go-see, you have to forget about it, because otherwise it'll eat you up. So there's a big difference between then and now with how it's done.
I was going to say, and nowadays, there's like a give and take with it where it's like for some parts, like you said, it's easier because you don't have to face someone face to face. And sometimes it's easier it's not that it's never easy to be rejected. No. Especially when you know what I mean?
But you also email. Yeah. Like you can email your headshots now. I had to snail mail everything. So then you're paying for stamps, all these envelopes. Like it is so much. Like you don't have to pay.
Then you're waiting the anxiety to get a reply.
If it gets lost, you're like, oh my God,
And I guess there's all that. The advantages now too is, like I said, I say it tongue in cheek, but it's kind of true. Anybody can be a model now on Instagram because we got, we got filters, we got more access. You got so much other things that are accessible to get your name out there that you didn't have in 1999. And then, like and I always feel like, we kind of show our age. Even though you kind of already told me your age, but we show our age when we start saying.
I'm a bad liar, so just say it.
Well, I'm saying is that like we show our age when we say things like, well, back when I did it was so much harder, like.
In my day.
Yeah, back in my day, we didn't have access to the internet. We didn't have access like to this and that and what have you. And then these people that are doing the Instagram modeling now, like. It's all Gucci right now for them, but then, 10, 15 years from now when technology changes and everything, they're going to be right where we're at saying those things, So, so you lead into doing the modeling and then finally you just kind of broke free and were like, you know what, I want to be Farrah. I want to do me. Yeah. I want to be, the horror babe. So the tattoos started coming and, I was fielding questions from fans because we've been, like I said, planning this for a while to have you on. And I'm looking through old questions that we had from a while ago. And someone was asking me, like, currently to date, how many tattoos do you currently have?
Oh, God.
Do you even keep count?
Well, if you go by each individual session, you can't even count it. But, I have a full back piece. Which is several different, it's a collage of different tattoos from different times. I've got let me see if I can remember because I'm not even looking at my back. Well, the whole bottom half is a psycho portrait. So I've got the house and I've got Janet Leigh being killed by Mother in the shower. That's all in the lower area. I have Night of the Living Dead as some filler in there, a large Edgar Allan Poe portrait on my shoulder blade. And on the other side, I have Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, the classic, monsters, and also Bela Lugosi as Dracula, and his victim. I believe her name was Helen Chandler, I think. Yeah.
I was going to say, so the keep count of it is kind of like crazy because, as you mentioned, like one tattoo. Yeah, because one tattoo kind of like evolves into a larger tattoo, so it's just
right, and they were all several sessions. Yeah,
so it's like, just the answer to the question is just a lot. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, several.
Which one hurt the most?
Oh God, my stomach, groovy.
I was going to say, like, because that's like, it's like a little bit, further down.
Oh, yes, it goes way down.
Yeah, so, I
am tall, though, so it's not as far as people think. They're like, oh, it goes down. I'm like, no, I'm very long, so it's actually not as close as you think.
Okay, I was going to say, it's like there's parts that we can't see, so we're like, wait, like, how far does this go down? Because at a certain point, there's a fork in the road. And you have two legs. So, But like that has to hurt, like just like in that area because it's just, a lot more sensitive, right?
Yes. Below the navel was pretty intense. So, yeah, that was probably my most memorable of, you suffer through it. You're never like tapping out or sweating or anything, you're just like, damn, this sucks. But, you expect it going in. You're not going to like lay there and be tickled by, feathers. So.
When I tell people when I got tattooed, I told them I was just like, you know what? The way I dealt with it, like the guy took a break. I'm like, dude, don't stop. Like I got to a point like my arm got numb. That I was just like, keep going, dude. Like, I don't need a break. Like, unless you need a break, I don't. Keep going because, like, once I start getting feeling in my arm again, that's when it's going to fucking hurt.
Yep, exactly.
So, a couple more questions that we have from fans because, again, one of the cool things that you brought up is that you are, like, a lead singer in band. So, where did the musical influence come from? Because I kind of feel like doing modeling, it kind of goes hand in hand, like. But, like, where did all that kind of just erupt from?
It's funny because, I never, I always, would sing, one of my major vocal influences was Sebastian Bach, actually, the singer of Skid Row. So, there's the 80s hair metal thing there. But I just loved how he had, like, such an amazing range, and he had a lot of rasp and attitude in his singing. And I was like, okay, like, that's what I want to do. So he was one of my major vocal influences, him, Pat Benatar, Ann Wilson from Heart, all these. So I took little pieces from everybody and would just sing along in my house, So not until I was in my 20s and my friends wanted to go to karaoke did I actually get the nerve to get up in front of people and sing. So I guess you could say I was self-taught for a majority of it. And, to shorten it, I was dating a guy and I was always like, oh yeah, I always want to get into a band. I was like, you should come see me sing karaoke. And he automatically assumed that because I sang karaoke, I must suck. So he's like, okay, here we go. I'll show up, and then I get off stage and he's like, you need a band. And I was like, okay. But, long story short, So long story short, he gets me an audition with his friend's cover band and that started it. So that was about 2012. And I formed my own cover band, cause I wanted to be in control of my schedule and the songs I sang and everything like that. So I was like, I'll just do my own thing. And I formed Mischief Night in, 2014. And I started taking vocal lessons then because, apparently I don't know everything or anything about it. I just was like, all right, I just open my mouth and this comes out. And I went to vocal training and he taught me how to breathe and how to, just the shape of your mouth can actually make tones come out better. So, if you actually articulate the vowel sounds and all that stuff. But so yeah, I went through that and, now I have another band with my husband called Sunset Strip, and that's an 80s hair metal tribute band. So I have a party band named Mischief Night, and Sunset Strip is the 80s hair metal tribute.
Now, one of the questions that I wanted to ask, because some other people who were looking at it from the modeling standpoint wanted to know, like, how did you build that courage to be in front of people? So, I mean, not only are you doing modeling, but doing a band, like having that stage presence, that courage to be out there in front of a live audience, people looking at you. How did you overcome that?
It's very daunting, and you wouldn't believe it, but I actually suffer from anxiety and social anxiety. So I have generalized anxiety disorder plus social anxiety, and I guess I'm just a glutton for punishment because I have to coach myself every time on stage to, be able to do the thing. And but I'm one of those people who I take the challenge and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to let this win. So I just challenge it every day. And so it's a struggle, but, it's funny because I'm a bad liar, but I'm a good actor. so there's that. So I just treat it like it's a gig. I'm like, okay, this is the hat I'm putting on today for this. So there you go. That's when I got into that. Yeah, because I was always awkward, being a goth chick in high school, you're kind of awkward. You don't really talk or socialize, let alone smile, So.
Yeah, that's kind of like part of the whole persona, right? Like, Like, why are you smiling? Like, there's no smiling
God.
goth chicks. Like, what is wrong with you?
Dismal.
Yeah. Like, did you fail a course in goth school? Like, why are you smiling? You know?
Apparently.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like being goth and wearing pink. Like, really? Or white?
I know, right?
Like, what is
now
wrong
I
with
do.
you?
I know.
Poser.
It's crazy.
So no, because we had female listeners that were sending in questions. So like, I've admired her work and everything, but like, I haven't gotten to that point where I feel comfortable being not naked, but like, like semi-nude, like bikinis.
You're pretty close to it.
Yeah, I mean, like,
you're in your skivvies.
Yeah, like ass cheeks out, like, and they're like, how did you build that courage to, to just, be like, okay, like I'm gonna do this,
You start out small. You go to what you're most comfortable in.
Hazmat suit.
If you were, that, or, burlap sack, all that,
Yeah.
But if you go to the beach in a bikini, just to have, photographers that you trust and, start out slow with that. And, sometimes it's easier for, female models to shoot with a female photographer who's going to coach her how to pose her body and, or, know what angles are good for her. And that's just, finding someone you're comfortable with to help get your feet wet, I guess would be my best advice to those who are interested and haven't really found the, what they need to feel confident to do it. But, anybody, I feel anybody can do it. If they have someone that they trust to take those photos for them.
Now, did you have any kind of negative experiences? Because I know we all have. You mentioned that it's easier to work with female photographers. Have you ever ran into instances where you're like, okay, like this guy's just, purposely being a creep or just came off creepy or, like...
There was one instance, but it wasn't for modeling, actually. I went for a casting call for an independent film, and it was just this, like, rich old dude who, like, wanted to make movies. But he had the auditions at his apartment, and he wanted to play the role of the male for the thing. And he's like, okay. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to do this scene with you. And he's like, well, this is the what I need. And I'm like, well, I'll do this with an actor, but I'm not going to do this with you. So, obviously that didn't go over too well. So I left. But, unfortunately, in these times, and a lot more back then, now that ever since, the Me Too movement's come forward, a lot more people are speaking out against things like this. But yeah, I mean, it happens a lot. And unfortunately, there's a lot of creeper photographers. And thankfully, because I had to know back in the day, I could tell someone now, but like, yeah, that ain't working with me. And, I'm also taller than most guys. So when I have heels on, I'm 6'4". So it's a little, I'm like, you're going to do what? So, but no, it is a very sad thing that happens right now. Because a lot of these young girls, they just want so bad to do this. And they can be manipulated by some of these creepy photographers that, like, there's stories. There's so many stories and a lot of, like, models I network with that have, run into situations where, like, photographers had hidden cameras in their dressing rooms and, like, or took photos, talked the girl into taking her top off, and then they would sell the photos or something like that. It's pretty brutal. So you just have to, know your boundaries, set your boundaries. And if something makes you uncomfortable, don't be afraid to tell somebody no and leave. They're not going to make or break you. If they're that creepy, they're not going to do shit about your career. That's for damn sure. If anything, you could stop them from hurting somebody else. Mm-hmm. So that's my advice to those girls. Cause, it's a scary world. There's a lot of creeps, unfortunately, and it ruins the name for a lot of good photographers.
And that's the point I was trying to get with is because, again, back to the Instagram and having so much access, like, it's such a competitive world that it's even more competitive now than it was back when you were doing it. And
yeah, it's also very oversaturated too.
Exactly.
So, like, everybody's a model and everybody's a photographer, and there's different levels.
And so many different girls and talent just want to, like you said, want to get on, want to be put on, and want to secure a gig that they're afraid that if they say no, it's just like, okay, well, I don't have an option. But you're saying that you do have the option of saying no.
Absolutely.
And it takes to hear someone else who's been successful, who's been there, to say that, because it carries so much more weight than me saying it, because, like, who the fuck am I? In all honesty, you know what I mean? Like, they're like, yeah, you're a podcast host, like, you're a DJ, like, what do you know about,
No, but you talk to a lot of people, so, you could have definitely some good insight.
But again, I think it carries so much more weight hearing it from you, someone who's been there and done that. So I guess what I want to ask off of that is like, obviously you said no, but like, what are your boundaries? What are things that like you just are like, no, that's just my no list. Like, I just don't even do that stuff.
Well, I don't shoot nudes. I have a few photographers that I am most comfortable with that, if I'm going to do like a hand bra type, it's called implied when you actually are nude, but you're not showing anything. So I have quite a few photographers I trust very, very much, that I know would never ever do anything to hurt me, or my image. They just want to make pretty pictures, too. So we have that kind of friendship where I know I can trust them. So if I've never shot with a photographer before, I definitely won't do implied, and I definitely won't do nudes. If I have a good first, second shoot with them, that might, be something, but I never ever show anything in my photographs. So I always am covered of some sort.
And it's good to have a list of things that you're comfortable doing and not doing.
Yeah.
And
there's nothing wrong with nude modeling, just it's not for me. So I.
And like I said, I think, and like I said, I'm not a model, but like if I were approaching it, like I would have a list of things that I'm comfortable doing, things that I'm not comfortable, like totally, and things that I'm like, okay, this might be negotiable. And my advice, and my advice to people out there is that like you're going to get photographers, and you're going to get people that are going to ask you if you want to do certain things that may be on your no list, and to not get discouraged because they asked if obviously like nude modeling is not your thing, and if a photographer were to ask you, do you do nude modeling? Don't, discredit that guy or, say, oh, well, I'm not going to work with him because again, he doesn't have your list unless you provide it to him ahead of time. He's not going to know what you're comfortable doing.
Yeah, some of my great friends and very close friend photographers, that's primarily what they shoot, and they are very, very respectful people, very close friends of mine, and when I started shooting with them, I told them I don't shoot nudes, and they were okay with it, even though that's one of their specialties. It's like artistic nudes, and they do beautiful, beautiful work with lots of girls, and and there's some girls who just love being naked. They feel like second nature, like that's where they belong, and and they make beautiful art together, these people. So it's not saying that every photographer who asks if you shoot nudes is being a pervert, because they're not, because it is something that is more acceptable, these days, and nude art modeling is not pornographic, so there's a big difference there too,
And that's the point I'm trying to get across, is because, as you mentioned, the whole Me Too movement, there's like that thin line where people think because they're asking you if you do this, they're like, oh my God, this guy's a pervert, this guy's a creep. And it's just like, no, it's just like, how do you ask now? Because again, you don't want people to think that, it's something more than, like people think too much into things, and it just makes a lot of photographer friends that I know that are like, I'm so nervous about asking people if they do certain types of stuff because I don't know how they're going to take it. I just ask them
it's all
like
in their tone and the verbiage. I mean, so it's I can understand how on both ends it's kind of daunting to even bring up,
Now, mention these girls that were hitting me up saying that, obviously, again, they admire what you do, but they have their insecurities, and they want to know, like, what insecurities did you have that you've gotten over, that you still have?
Oh, I have tons of them.
I know you mentioned about being, having anxiety and everything, but is there anything that, like, you just, like, I wish I, this part, I was, this body part I was, better at, or, this or that, I could change, like, take us through that.
Oh my gosh. I mean, well, every woman has cellulite, so of course that's always something that we all worry about. But, you know, I mean, a good photographer knows their lighting, knows how to smooth the small imperfections and what have you. Weight is a big thing, you know, even still. I mean, there's a certain weight I like to be, so when I'm not that, but I like to live life. So it's a balance. You know, I'm like, all right, well, am I going to not shoot if I have an extra 5 pounds on me? No. I am getting older, you know, so I do get nervous about certain lighting and shadows and what have you. You know, and then well, when we get to it, there's a certain body part now that I am a little more, you know, I know my angles now because, I did have a procedure, which I guess, should I go into it now?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, we're coming up in a couple months, like the 2-year anniversary of being cancer-free.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, take us through, you know, the different levels of that, like when you first heard about it, you know, that the diagnosis, like the mindset to go through it, because there's going to be people that are listening right now that are going through it or, you know, are gone through it. So when you first heard, or like, how did you know something was wrong?
Well, so for those who don't know it, I had breast cancer, stage 1, thankfully. Was diagnosed in May of 2019. I was in the shower and I was doing a self-exam and I felt something which felt like about the size of a grain of uncooked rice. Very, very small. In the upper exterior, like near your armpit, but, still on the breast. And I was like, well, that's new. That shouldn't be there. And I ignored it for like a week or two, and it was still there because I was like, oh, maybe it's just like a stupid, you know, calcium deposit or something. And so a few weeks went by, and I asked my husband, I was like, do you feel this? And he was like, yeah, I do. You should get that checked out. And long story short, I caught it very, very early, and I elected to do a double mastectomy because of my age, because I am technically very young still to have breast cancer. The chances of it coming back at some point are, you know, always considered a high risk once you've had it. So I was like, well, I'll just remove the source. And I did a double mastectomy. Thankfully, I didn't need chemo or radiation. If I did a lumpectomy, I would have had to have radiation. And I would have had to have, my breasts were not natural beforehand. So, and having radiation can damage your implants. So I would have had to have them redone anyway. So I'm like, well, this is all just many, many surgeries. I'll just get the whole thing done and wipe out the source and make my chances of it coming back a lot smaller. So that's one thing I'm very insecure about still is, even though they did an amazing job on my reconstruction, like, I mean, I still have the surface all looks the same because, you know, the location of my cancer and the stage of it, I was able to keep my nipples, essentially. So all the incisions and everything are hidden in, like, where an underwire bra goes. And, I mean, I healed phenomenally. And they'll never, ever be perfect because once you remove breast tissue, you can still see some hint of an implant at certain angles. So that's something I'm insecure about. But, you know, once again, I know how to hide it. I know my angles. I can use certain bras or bikinis and certain things fit a certain way. Then I know it, nobody will pick up on it, essentially.
And for most people, probably wouldn't even notice anyway. Like, that's the one thing. Yeah. That's the one thing I always notice about insecurities. It's easy to say it in retrospect, you know, but a lot of people are, like, so insecure about different parts of their body. And I'm like, you're insecure about it, but how many people actually are noticing what you're insecure about? You know,
we're our own worst enemies.
Yeah, not to downplay, you know, your situation or anything, but it's just like how many people, like you said, were even noticing. No one would even notice, you know, that you went through what you went through. You said that you were doing a self-test. Was it just a regular self-test, or was it something that you just kind of found by accident?
Just, I mean, you know, just the usual. I mean, there's a certain way women are supposed to check their breasts. You know, you put your one arm behind your head and you make a circular motion. So, you know, and I was like, oh, it's May, you know, and I don't know. I was like, I'm getting older, and I was 42 at the time, and there it was. I was like, oh, okay.
Because I mean, it's just like most people probably, and I mean, I don't know because I'm speaking from the male point of view, but yeah. I mean, how many people actually like the fact that you're like, it's May and like this is like a routine thing, like I'm really shocked because I don't know how many people actually routinely check themselves. You see what I'm saying? Like there's probably.
I was an advocate for that. Once this all happened, I made sure that I was very public with my story so that people would check themselves.
Like make it a routine thing to check,
Yeah.
Like you said,
and once a month. Yeah.
And he said there's a a certain technique of doing it. So it's just like definitely like Google it, just research it, like know all the ways of checking and staying on a routine and making reminders because there's probably people out there again that are just because really like who's thinking about it, like it's like it's foolish and it's like ignorance on our part that we don't think it could happen to us. But it can.
1 in 8 women.
Yeah.
Yep. 1 in 8 women.
So
get it.
1 in 8 women, you stop and you think about that. Like it can happen to you, and it's just like you're one of the lucky ones that found it early, but there's people out there.
Acted on it early.
Yeah.
If I didn't go. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's people out there that, like you said, are not even acting on it or, even keeping a routine or knowing, the way of checking. They're just kind of just going on with life and everything. And then it's like they don't find it, it finds them, and then that's when it's like the battle's so much harder to overcome. So obviously having anxiety already, like how did you mentally hang in there?
My husband is quite a rock star. He really is. I mean, he handled everything so perfectly. I mean, he's no stranger to it. His mother actually fought breast cancer 3 times and won. She's, an amazing, amazing woman, very, very strong. And, so when I was going through it, he was the constant support I needed. I mean, he took care of me after my surgery. I mean, I'm walking around with drains in me. I mean, I had, I didn't like wake up from a double mastectomy and have new boobs. I had to go through a process with expanders. I didn't exactly look, to be blunt, I didn't look good for quite a few months. I had these, things were not okay. So, but he was great. I mean, he did everything for me. He helped me. He was just there for me. And oh my God, so many people were there for me. It was amazing. I had an amazing support system, and that's huge.
Very crucial
to have that. Yeah. I mean, everybody was just on my side and just rooting for me and I think one of the main reasons I did go public with it wasn't for, the pity party or anything like that, but I'm like, okay, if I can turn this into, motivation for people to, be aware or to not be afraid to make this choice, then that occupied my brain. That I'm like, okay, I'm going to show people that even though it's scary, it doesn't have to be scary. Like, it's okay to make this decision. If you have questions, to ask me. And so making that a priority kind of helped me from sitting there and looking at myself going, woe is me. It was like, okay, I'm going to show people that they can do this too. I'm going to show people that, they don't have to stop, wearing bikinis or anything like that after if they choose to go through this. So I wanted to make sure that I could come back and bounce back, 125%, and just show that it can be done. So I used that to kind of push me to stay positive and all that stuff through it.
And one of the great things about it is I always try to lean on the side of positivity. And if there's anything positive that can come out of being diagnosed with any form of cancer, no matter what stage, no matter what form of cancer, is to make it seem normal, normalizing it to the fact that, this can happen to anybody and we don't stop living. And I think that's one of the crucial things of overcoming it. And, you know, obviously with technology and medicine and science now, like the survival rate is so much higher than it was, you know, 20, 30 years ago. But the fact that we can normalize it to the point where it's just like, it's a scary thing. Like, I'm not going to shit you and say it's not, you know, you don't get scared. There is going to be times where you're going to be scared, but it's beatable. And it's something that, you know, anybody can, defeat, you know, but it's about, again, making it normalized to the point where people are like, hey, you know, like, not that you don't take it seriously, but it's just like, you know, so many other people before me have gone through this and have beat it. You know, so it's like a kudos and, you know, a tip of the cap to you for someone who is strong enough to say, you know, like, hey, I went through this. Because there's a lot of people out there that are, you know, going through it now, that are, you know, depressed and have anxiety, or people who have gone through it, beaten it, and, you know, for whatever reasons, they're not comfortable talking about it. And that's their prerogative, and that's totally, you know, up to them. But what I'm saying right now as an advocate for, you know, an ally for people that are going through this is like, don't be embarrassed. Don't be ashamed that, you know, you had to go through this. Like, embrace it. Share your story, because your story is motivation for the next person, you know. And if we snowball that effect to the point where, you know, everybody feels comfortable talking about it, where it's just like, it's like a normal thing, then there's no room for anxiety. There's no room for depression. There's no room for embarrassment, because everybody can go through it and everybody can beat it. And it's just, again, leaning towards positivity.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've had conversations with complete and perfect strangers online, because I've said, you know, if anyone ever has any questions, you know, do you know someone going through this? Are you going through this? Like, you know, some advice on how to, if they want doctor, you know, recommendations or, you know, whatever, like, you know, I just wanted them to know. I'm like, you know, you can ask me. Like, this is something I want to help people with, is to not be afraid, you know, of, you know, what the next step should be.
So coming up in August will be 2 years that you're cancer free. So what's the latest update on it? Like, how often have you had to go see, you know, follow-up visits? You know, where are they saying right now?
I mean, after that, it'll be every 6 months. My oncologist is every 3 months. I go in, they just talk to me and take my blood and read all that stuff. And every 6 months, I see the surgeon who performed my double mastectomy, and she gives me a physical exam, because I no longer need to get mammograms, because there's no breast tissue there. Should she ever feel or, you know, feel that there's something there possibly, then that's when I would go and have an MRI, and it would check that way. But thankfully, everything has been, you know, on point since then, and all good. So yeah, it'll be every 6 months. I think after, is it after 3 years? Wait, I'm not sure what the timeline is, but then it'll go to like once a year. So, but yeah, and that's a lot of things that people don't do sometimes. They'll just one and done it, and they don't follow up with their appointments. So even though I'm sitting there and they're like, oh, is anything different? I'm like, nope, all the same, you know, I'm still showing up for those appointments, because if they read my labs and like something's off, I wouldn't have known if I didn't go to that appointment, you know?
Well, very awesome. You know, we're all ecstatic to hear that, you know, we're going to be celebrating 2 years cancer free, and that you're such a big advocate for it. And I think,
thank you.
And yeah, definitely. And I think one of the things that I admire more about the fact that, you know, you're encouraging people that they can be a model or they can be in a rock band or everything, is the fact that you're a survivor and you're able to tell that story and encourage people to, you know, get your routine checks, go ahead and do your follow-ups, all that stuff like that. There carries so much more weight for me and my admiration for you than any of the stuff you could do, you know, modeling wise, because you're using your platform as a way to, you know, reach out to people. So that's, you know, very awesome in my book.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I sat there and I was like, you know what I do? I have, between Facebook and, you know, people I've met through all different, you know, all the hats I wear, from my day job, the bands, and then the modeling. I'm like, it'd be stupid not to use this as information for people, you know, for having this access to people.
Now,
I thought it was irresponsible if I didn't do that.
Now, I was going to say, what do you have plans for going to the future? Like, again, you totally mind-blown me because I didn't realize you were 44. Like, I'm like, there's what? I'm like, we said, I'm like, stop lying. Like, you know, but like, you've mentioned a couple of times throughout the show that, you know, you're getting older. So like, what is your plans and goals? And I mean, is you more focused on doing the band stuff or the modeling stuff? Like, what can we expect from Farrah in the next 5-10 years from there?
Well, right now everything is pretty much at the same level. I mean, I work full time. You know, my band is not full time, but because I have to, balance is key. You have to have balance. I need to make time for myself too. So it's like, you know, you do the day job thing, you do the band thing, and you know, I like to model at least maybe once or twice a month, if not, you know, more if I get like some other gigs and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I want to do it my joke is I'll take pictures as long as people still want them. So, you know, yeah, I love it. And, I guess as long as I don't break the camera, I'll keep doing it.
Well, I have a better chance of breaking the camera than you do. So I think I will take care of that for you. You mentioned all the social platforms that you're on. Let everybody know where they can find out information from you as far as, you know, modeling, the band stuff. Where can people stay in contact with you? And if people had questions and want to ask you stuff about your journey with, you know, dealing with cancer.
Probably the easiest place for people to reach me is on Instagram. So it's Farrah_DeMorte. I also have a backup account on there too, which is like Farrah DeMorte official backup or something like that. But the main account is one they can always reach out to me. I have a Facebook fan page too, which is Farrah DE space Morte. But I also have a Facebook profile too. But that one I never answer because it just comes in like crazy. So, and it's usually just hi. The one guy, hi. And I'm like, okay, I can't. So, but yeah, no, Instagram, they can just write a message. I can read it and then, you know, help them with that. I've made quite a few, female connections on there, with women who have gone through this or going through this. And it's been great. So yeah, definitely they can always reach me there.
Now, is there anything lastly you want the fans to know that we didn't touch on or speak about? Anything that you want the fans to know before you leave? I
mean, you know, I'm just grateful that I do even still have fans. You know, it's funny because I don't think I'm anybody special. I just do stuff that I like, and I'm into like weird stuff. And if people, you know, can relate to that, then that's awesome. And I'm just grateful that people think I'm cool enough to follow. You know, because I'm not like that's another thing that's changing is everyone's got these TikToks and they're always making these videos and doing all this stuff. And I don't have that kind of time to do that kind of stuff. So I just, I'm like, I wish I did, but I don't, you know, I have my hand in all these other things. So hopefully, you know, I don't become obsolete because I'm not doing the new thing.
I tell people, and I've said it in past episodes of the podcast, I don't know where people find the time to stay up to date with all these different social media platforms and learning all of them and constantly feeling like they have to put out new content. It's a job in its own just to keep continuously putting stuff out there, you know, but it's, you know, it's a dog-eat-dog world out there where, you know, it's survival of the fittest sometimes where it's like you got to keep putting out content so that people can, you know, find you, and it's just, it's tiring.
Exhausting. I'm exhausted.
I'm tired talking about it. Yes. I'm like, where do you people get the energy to do this? Like, there's not enough Red Bulls and Starbucks in the world for me to stay up to date on all these. And it's sad because, like you said, you kind of like almost feel like you're going to get to a point where you need to learn how to use it. you know, because if not, you're going to get lost in the dust, you know what I'm saying? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
how many people said that, you know, I don't need an email address, you know, in 1997, you know, I don't need an email address, you know, it's just
I'll
like,
just stick to AOL, it's fine.
I got AOL Messenger. Catch me in the chat rooms, you know.
Dial up.
Yeah, it's like age, sex, location, you know what I mean? Like, you can see the little guy running across your screen. You know, so yeah, I mean, it's just like, even like the Snapchat, and I've said this numerous times, everybody knows like my Snapchat is not my Snapchat because somebody else has my name on Snapchat.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, how do you have my name? Like, it's a trademark registered name. How can you have my name? So I'm just like, screw it. Don't even do Snapchat. Don't really have the time for Snapchat. But then a lot of these like these apps and everything are embracing everybody else's technologies anyway. You know, so like I had spoken to a guest once before and they're like, yeah, you remember Periscope? You know, and now it's just like, yeah, but now it's like everybody has their own form of it. You know what I mean? So it's like Instagram has stories and now they got Reels, and so does Twitter, and so does Facebook, and Facebook is Instagram, and vice versa. And like, I don't know. It's just, it's like a soap opera sometimes, trying to keep up with all the,
very much.
Who's with who, you know, so. Well, it's been awesome talking to you, and it was well worth the wait for me. Because
thank you so much
again,
for having me.
Yeah, because it was someone that I wanted to have on for a while, and I know I hit you up years ago, and it was just so recently that I was like cleaning out DM messages online, and I'm like, oh wow, like we were supposed to have you on the podcast like 2 years ago, like, so you know, you still interested? And it's cool because it's just like, now it's just like, all right, would this have been as good of an interview 2 years ago? I would say not, because
probably not as informative. No. Mm-hmm.
And not only that, because I probably would have sucked 2 years ago. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm serious. Joking, not joking. No, but I mean, it's just cool that, you know, that it's more informative now. And it's, like I said, I'm more interested in having you share your story and your experience with that world than I did anything else that you've done. Not to discredit anything else you've ever done, but I just felt like that was like more important, you know? So it's just like, you know, it was like a blessing in disguise that we did not have you on. Although I would have brought you on anyway after the fact, you know, but it's cool that it was like a one and done. We didn't have to like make this chapters, you know, nothing against us having chapters, because you're always welcome back on the show whenever you want to come on. But it was cool that we were able to kind of talk about this all in one shot, and, you know, hopefully people take what you said and, you know, take it for a truth that, you know, hey, go get checked, stay up on your routines, you know, in your visits, and definitely, you know, keep pushing forward. So with that being said, I thank you again for coming on, and, you know, we're always going to stay up to date and find everything that you're doing online. So keep being you and keep being awesome.
Thank you so much for having me again. Hey guys, this is Farrah DeMorte, and you are listening to Mixed Masta B on MMB Radio.